strikes continue in the Middle East today after the U.S. and Israel launched a wave of attacks yesterday, killing Iran's supreme leader. Both sides are now not backing down. Iran has vowed to launch its most intense offensive operation ever, while Donald Trump promised to hit Iran with a force that it has never been seen before. Last hour, we had confirmation that from the U.S. military that 3 service members were killed, 5 others wounded. Israeli police have confirmed at least 9 people were killed in a fresh strike that hit central Israel today. At least 3 people are dead in the UAE following Iranian attacks on that country, and hundreds potentially dead in Iran, particularly children at a school. With no end to these strikes, there are many questions about the state of the region moving forward. Aaron David Miller is a former U.S. State Department Middle East negotiator and expert on the U.S. presence in the region. We've spoken to him many times before. Glad to have you here this morning.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Are you surprised by this decision by the president? Are you surprised with this operation?
I figured that military operations of some level and character were inevitable, given the fact that the administration had deployed the most massive arrangement of naval and air and missile power since the 2003 Iraq War. I guess what surprised me was the comprehensiveness of the war aims and American objectives. And let's be very clear here. We're not talking about the day after. We're not talking about the week after. We're not talking about the month after. It's going to take a very long time to determine whether or not the removal of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and many other senior Iranian officials fundamentally creates a situation where you have better government in Iran, where Iran's hostile adversarial intentions change over time, and whether instead of becoming a revolution, the country actually becomes an accepted member of the international community. Those questions are not going to be answered easily or quickly.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions anyway. First of all, there is some reporting that the CIA from, I guess, inside Iran was the organization that flagged where Khamenei was so that he could be taken out. How deep do you think that intelligence presence has been? What would your expectation be in terms of what they're doing and how deeply they are entrenched there?
Well, I think the Israelis probably could have killed the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, during the 12-day war in June. This was a joint American-Israeli operation. They've been tracking Ali Khamenei's habits, his movements, not for years, but clearly for the last year. So that does not come as a surprise to me. The Israelis and the Americans eliminated the head of the Revolutionary Guard, the head of the National Security Council, at least 40 other senior clerics and security officials. That doesn't answer the mail, however. This is a multi-layered political, clerical security system which will absorb and try to create continuity. They've already begun to take steps to fill those gaps and those positions. The real question, again, is not regime change. We're not looking, nor are we on the cusp of the emergence of a liberal democratic polity in Iran. It's transformation within the regime, whether or not there are elements within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the political establishment who believe that there was a better course of action to be applied other than the one that a 86-year-old leader, a child of the revolution, was following. That's the core question. Whether or not there's an Iranian Delcy Rodriguez in the wings vis-a-vis Venezuela that can enter into some sort of relationship with the United States. It's going to take some time to answer that question.
How long do you think, Aaron David Miller, the strikes, the operation will go on? Because the president has made it clear, obviously, he will hit back, but he also doesn't want boots on the ground. He doesn't want the American military there.
Look, there was never a problem with boots on the ground. We may have put in special operators, but there was never any possibility that the U.S. would do in Iraq and deploy scores of thousands of American ground troops. Look, the real concern on the part of the Defense Department and the Joint Chiefs is the lack of interceptors for air defense. And the Iranians have not yet revealed the intensity of the military operations that they can conduct. I think that this will go on for the better part of this week and could go on and off for some time to come. But I think that the vast majority of the strikes, some 900 by the U.S. and 500 by the Israelis, I think you've seen this sort of shock and awe demonstration of power. That could change if Iran escalates and you have a mass casualty event in which large numbers of Americans, civilians or military, are killed.
Are you surprised at the retaliation Iran is taking, that it is not all at Israel, that there are now, a handful of people dead in the UAE and there have been other strikes? That doesn't seem like a smart decision, but give me your take about how that affects the region.
Well, first of all, the Iranians are going after American targets in those places.
Yes.
And I think this Iranian bunch, particularly in the wake of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death, have to demonstrate that they had the capacity to draw blood. And they've demonstrated that. But the U.S. has escalation dominance here. We can escalate at will. And I think even though the Iranians have an option of escalating, in terms of what we could do to counter that escalation, there's a fundamental asymmetry of power here. So I think I was surprised, actually, and I'm still surprised, that the Iranian reaction so far has been relatively restrained. You've got 9 dead in Israel, some significant destruction of buildings in the areas around Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. And as you put it, yes, some civilian damage in the Gulf states. We'll see within the next several days whether or not this can be contained or whether or not we're due for another escalatory cycle.
I get that, and this will be my last question, I get that we don't know where this is going and it will take some time for things to be figured out. But what should we look for to know that this has been a pivotal moment for Iran? What are the signs you'll be watching?
Well, I mean, look, eliminating the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei makes it a pivotal moment already.
Right.
You could put that in your pocket. The implications, the consequences for regime stability, for transformation, those are now set into motion. I guess my point to you is, if you're talking beyond the military issue, and it'll be clear whether this is escalating within the next couple of days, I just think it's going to take a while to play out. Just keep one thing in mind. The Israelis killed Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, and yet Hamas controls 47% of Gaza today, roughly half the Gaza Strip. The Israelis killed Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, and yet Hezbollah, while down in Lebanon, is still a preeminent political actor. The structures, the ideologies, the environment that produce these extremists and these hardliners has not changed. And it raises the question, and it should for anyone looking at this. It is interesting to note, by the way, that only Canada and Australia have come out in real support among American allies of the Trump administration's epic fury military campaign, which is in itself an intriguing question I would have for you. But again, it's going to take a long time to determine whether or not what we've watched in the last 48 hours will become a headline or a trend line and really have a transformational impact on regional politics and regional stability.
Aaron David Miller, always nice to speak with you, particularly this weekend. Definitely needed your perspective. Thank you, sir.
And thank you.
There's a lot of reaction, obviously, to this developing story, particularly from the Middle East. Yair Lapid is the leader of the opposition in Israel, often a critic of the current government. I spoke with him a little earlier this morning. Mr. Lapid, welcome back to the program. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Rosemary. I think the last time we talked was just after October 7th, so trouble follow one of us around.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and obviously lots has happened, including just over the past 24 hours. Let me start there. Are you supportive of Israel's actions against Iran?
Totally. And this is a rarity. I think I've justly earned the title Prime Minister Netanyahu's most bitter rival. And yet on this, I support fully the government and, of course, our security forces, because we must have done what we're doing now long time ago. It is it doesn't happen a lot in the 21st century that you have a clear, just war. I mean, it's a war between good and evil, and so far, good prevails.
There is conversation in the United States, I'm sure you know, that Donald Trump did not, in fact, make the case for this war to the American people. The New York Times calls it a war of choice. How do you explain that to people watching?
Well, what is the choice? The choice was to wait until Iran will have an atomic bomb to be dropped on Israel, on Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, or enough ballistic missiles to shower the entire country with missiles and kill as many people as they can. They never even denied this is the purpose of developing those programs. So what was the choice? The choice was for us to just wait until they kill us, which doesn't seem to me like much of a choice. And the choice of the United States was just to make sure that just to wait until Iran becomes a nuclear global power, and there will be a new nuclear race because other countries in the region would like to have the same abilities. So this is not much of a choice, and this is not a war of choice. This was inevitable.
Ayatollah Khamenei is dead now, as are other senior leaders in the regime. What do you think that means for the regime? Because obviously they are going to choose another leader. They are going to try and stop any overthrow of their regime. What do you think it means?
Well, I think, first of all, Ayatollah Khamenei was not a legitimate leader of a state, as he's sometimes being described. He was the leader of a terror organization who took over a country, an ancient culture that deserves so much better. So now it's up to the people of Iran. I mean, we don't know yet whether the people of Iran are going to have their own Mandela or their own Gandhi or their own Lech Walesa. I hope for them. We are trying to create the conditions that will make this possible. It's time for them to be freed. I think, Rosemary, like everybody else, you looked at the beginning of last January at the people who took to the streets of Tehran with admiration, the courage, the determination. They knew they're going to be killed by the thousands, and yet they were willing to fight for freedom, for women's rights. And they deserve so much better, and the region deserves a changed Iran. And we are now creating the circumstances in which it might be possible for the first time in a long, long time.
I'm sure you know, though, that regime change, is very difficult, and it rarely happens just from the air. That it usually requires the military to go into the country. That doesn't seem to be where the United States is going, and I'm sure it's not where Israel wants to go either. So how do you think it will unfold then without those kinds of supports?
Well, I'm a very small believer in the possibility of a regime change from the outside, whether it's airstrikes or boots on the ground. I think it's going to happen if the people of Iran will take their own destiny in their own hands. It has to come from within, otherwise it will be artificial and it will never succeed. I think the will is there, I think the determination is there, and I think now the possibilities has changed, or the opportunity has presented itself for other reasons maybe, but they can took their lives into their own and make sure that they create a different future for their children.
Iran is obviously retaliating not only in Israel, but in countries across the region. How concerned are you about a broader regional war taking place, Mr. Lapid?
I don't think it's a regional war. I think it's Iran attacking everyone because this is the way they are. I mean, there is no reason for that. They just killed 3 people in the UAE. Why? There's no real reasoning behind this. I think somebody was just killed in Bahrain. Why? So what they're doing now is they're doing what terror organizations are doing. It's just trying to kill as many people as they can without even thinking about the whys, because this is the way they are. It's not a regional war. If anything, it's the other way around, because it unites the region against Iran, because it's a rogue country, and nobody wants to deal with a rogue country.
I'm not sure if you've spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu, but I wonder what you think the next steps are for Israel in this.
Well, we're set to meet tomorrow, and we're going to discuss everything. And of course, we've discussed it before the operation. I think right now, as I was saying, we had 2 very separate goals on this one. One is to get rid of the nuclear and the ballistic missile programs, which is the immediate threat on Israel, the immediate existential threat on Israel. And the other one is to change the circumstances within Iran. We're going to achieve the first one because we have the ability, and of course, the ones who are leading this, and this is very different from what happened in last June, are the Americans, which is the mightiest military force in the history of humanity. And the other goal, we just have to wait and see. So I'm going to talk to the Prime Minister about how to complete the first part, and what do we think about the way the international community is capable and can do on the latter.
I will leave it there. Yair Lapid, thank you so much for coming back on the program. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Rosemary.
We are following the developing story out of the Middle East as strikes continue in Iran and Israel today. U.S. President Donald Trump had been contemplating some sort of action in Iran for several weeks, months even. This move weakens the already fragile relationship between the 2 countries, at least for now. I'm joined now by Ambassador Barbara Leaf. She's the former Senior Director for the Middle East and North Africa and Special Assistant to President Biden. Nice to see you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have your perspective. How significant do you think these strikes are? And I guess my second question, and there are probably 2, do you think that the president made the case that they were needed?
No, I don't think he has. But on the other hand, what I'm finding is that events move at sort of head-snapping speed. I just a moment ago saw a report that the president has told a journalist that he's been contacted by the Iranian leadership, no details on who, when, that they want to speak to him and that he plans to speak to them. So I think this can morph, this conflict can morph in some very unexpected directions. It could continue or it could revert to something that is more of a diplomatic channel.
Yeah, we spoke to Aaron David Miller off the top of this program, and he was suggesting that as well, that there is a possibility that there is some sort of group within the regime that understands that this is not working and that there might be a need to deal directly with the United States. I don't know if that's what the president is suggesting there, but what do you think is the likelihood of that?
Well, that is what he's suggesting. But again, this is only from one source, so we'll see how this develops over the next couple of hours. I'd also seen reports that he had sent a message through a European interlocutor asking to speak to the Iranians or saying, let's have a ceasefire. They rebuffed him. I heard from a Gulf official, senior Gulf official this morning, that their attempt to have sort of a back channel just showed that the Iranians were, as they put it, very arrogant and belligerent. So we'll see.
You were on the ground in Syria following regime change there. I guess that
Yes.
was in 2024.
Yes.
Give me a sense of what that looks like and what it has to look like for it to take hold.
Well, let's remember that was a 13-year ferociously bloody conflict that at one point had hundreds of thousands of fighters on the field and fighters coming in from Hezbollah, Russian air power, Iranian-backed militias from Iraq, from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the Iranians themselves. It was a scrum, but in the end, what happened in December was a collapse of Syrian armed forces in the face of a push by Ahmed al-Shara and his group HTS. They went on an effort to take Aleppo and found that they just were able to cut through Syrian forces like a hot knife through butter. So this was an unexpected thing, but the Syrian armed forces had been completely hollowed out. And the Russians and the Iranians were not available to help their ally. So things collapsed. That's a very different prospect from what we see in Iran, where there's a deep resiliency in this security state structure. But that doesn't mean that a group won't look for an out.
You mentioned the support from other countries. I don't think we've seen or heard any more much, anyway, from Russia and China. And
Not
you would
at all.
sort of, yeah. What does that indicate to you?
I didn't expect any. Look, they are bystanders to this. The Russians are single priority is Ukraine, not Iran, not Syria before it. And they don't have the bandwidth in any case to do anything. They don't want to get into a confrontation of any kind with the U.S. military on the high seas or in the air. Same for China. China's watching this and will look and learn from this in terms of its own priority, Taiwan. But they're not going to get themselves involved beyond political rhetoric.
I wonder, though, if some of the arms that Russia is using in Ukraine come from Iran. I wonder if that could have an impact. Maybe it might be too soon to ask that question.
No, I think the terrible thing about Iran's venture with the Russians and entering effectively into the battle space, the European battle space, is it provided a sort of a lab for testing these drones and to refining them. The drones are doing a lot of damage to civilian infrastructure in the Gulf, and the Gulf states are shocked and furious.
Yeah. You've worked extensively in the Middle East. Tell me whether this moment is different, whether you think this moment could be different.
Of course, it is different. Look, the region itself is in a state of what I would call it high plasticity, which is to say the events of 2024 in particular, between the collapse of Syria's regime, 50-plus year Assad regime, the battering, the destruction that was meted out to Hezbollah and to and the pushback that had on the other axis of resistance members, the pummeling that Iran has taken repeatedly over the last 2 years. This has reshaped the landscape, which is not to say that it then reshapes into a desired end. It could continue to develop into great instability. So on the backside of this military campaign, it's imperative to do the political and diplomatic work to stabilize.
And do you have a sense from what you've heard from the president that he wants to do that? Because it's hard to know whether this is an in and out kind of situation or whether and we heard him call for Iranians themselves to rise up. What do you think the president's intention is in terms of that, the long-term thing?
The consistency for this president is that he is willing and ready to use massive U.S. firepower and presence and engagement, but for a short, sharp, and decisive purpose. He does not want a long engagement. He has made it very clear, while exhorting repeatedly the Iranian people to rise up and take over, he's made very clear that he sees a limited role for the U.S., which is to smash things apart, but then the U.S. will not be there to reformulate things on the other end. So it's a very mixed bag.
Do you, I don't know whether you think this was the right moment. Do you think that this was the right thing to do at this moment?
It was a war of opportunity, so a war of choice, but with really vast defined goals or not well-defined goals.
Right.
Regime change, that is a hugely slippery slope, and you can't do it from the air.
And do you think that
So
Americans...
the risk is that you...
Yeah,
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Ambassador.
No, any military commander will tell you, and historians will tell you, you don't get regime change from the air, or rather you get regime collapse, but you cannot do regime creation from the air. That requires something very different, and we don't have a good track record in the Middle East on that.
I was just going to end, Ambassador, with your sense of whether you think Americans would be supportive of these actions.
A limited military engagement, yes, if it looks successful. They do not want a prolonged military engagement in the Middle East. The shadow of Iraq hangs over all of us.
Former Ambassador Barbara Leaf, you're very smart. Thank you for making time this morning for us.
Thank you.
The strikes are the culmination of a massive U.S. military buildup that has taken place in recent weeks in the Middle East, the largest since the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. That buildup had been happening against the backdrop of talks between Iranian and American officials to try and reach an agreement regarding Iran's nuclear program. The status of that, all now very unclear. For more insight, though, on the airstrikes and what we could see in the coming days, retired U.S. Major General Paul Eaton joins me this morning. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
You have been a critical voice of Donald Trump in the past. So let me start with the question about whether you think this was the right moment to strike and what you made of the president's justification for doing it.
Well, we have a process, a political process, whereby if you have an immediate threat, the president is authorized to react to that immediate threat. This was not an immediate threat. It was not a vital national interest. Yet he loaded combat power in the area of operations, and he executed an attack without due process under our Constitution. Mm-hmm. So we'll let the politicians figure all that out over time. But right now, the immediate question is, what's next? Military planning, we address, we do a plan. We have assumptions. We apply contingency planning to each assumption if it fails or not. But the real question is, what's next? The sequel. And yep, you've taken out the leadership. What now, Mr. President? What's your plan?
So let me ask you a couple questions about that then. How long would you expect strikes to go on?
When you open the Pandora box, if you will, it's hard to know what's going to come out of that jar. And we are flying, if not blind, we are certainly not flying with 100% intelligence solution of what's going on. So there's a tit for tat going on. The Iranians are firing. We are firing. The Israelis are firing. Not sure whether you're going to see the 5 Arab countries that have been struck by Iran return fire, or Saudi Arabia, who has not yet been struck to my knowledge. So we've got all the unknowns, and you're asking a great question. We don't know what's going to come, and we don't know how long it's going to last.
We do know, though, if we look at history, that regime change certainly doesn't happen through airstrikes. The United States doesn't want to put boots on the ground. In fact, the president called for Iranians themselves to rise up for this, for regime change to take hold. So what do you think that means in terms of military engagement, U.S. troops' presence in the region?
Well, we have a congressman named Seth Moulton who said it as well as anybody the other day. This looks a whole lot like Iraq 2.0. Iraq has half the population of Iran. It is a much smaller country. Iran is geographically complex, big distances. It's a power unto itself simply out of size and population. So they have options. And we always say, the enemy has a vote. And this business of sequel planning failed in Iraq. In fact, Mr. Rumsfeld said, you will not, Tommy Franks, our commander of CENTCOM at the time, you will not do contingency planning to address failed assumption that they're going to greet us with infrastructure in place. And you're not going to plan for the phase 4, the what's next, the sequel. I don't know if that happened here. I don't know if we've got a shadow government in waiting. I don't know if we have a plan to supply Iranian protesters who may wish to turn into the next government of Iran. I don't know what's been done, and the American people, particularly the mothers and fathers of the sons and daughters who are engaged in active conflict right now, and we've just gotten a report of the first killed in action. So there are a lot of questions here.
What is the likelihood, because of this president, who is unpredictable to say the least, but who also was elected very much on a promise to keep the United States out of foreign wars, has now started one, whether it's a conflict or a broader, a regional war, I don't know. What is the likelihood that the president just walks away, that this unfolds over a number of days, and then if he doesn't get the regime change that he wants, he just walks away?
Well, unfortunately, America has allowed, the Republican Party has allowed one-man rule in America. We've got sweatshirts, T-shirts going around out there, 250 years, still no kings. Well, I'm not sure. It's going to depend entirely upon the Republican Party to help contain this president and to guide an outcome. For him to walk away right now, all I can say is, November's coming, baby, and it is a reckoning where we will vote and do whatever it is that we can do to contain this president, much to the relief of our neighbors to the north and south.
Let me end on this, if I can, Major General. What role will Iranian citizens play? Do you think that they can and should do what Donald Trump is saying?
The Iranian citizens, I have great faith in the nature of the Iranian population and the Iranian citizen. I believe that they are well educated. I believe that their hearts are in the right place. They are more European than people give them credit for. And so there is an abundance of talent available. It is, however, they're at a disadvantage to the Basij and to the other paramilitary forces heavily armed. We've heard reports of 30,000 casualties in the last series of riots and protests. So if we don't act on the president's commentary, rise up and take control of your government, if we do not go in and open up lines of communication, VPN, internet, do we provide weapons on the borders? Do we have stockpiles ready to go? What's the plan? And nobody's answering that plan, and I fear that what we've done is cut off the head of the snake, and if he walks away, we will have a moral dilemma of the first order that will endure for this entire century.
Retired U.S. Major General Paul Eaton, lots of questions still to be answered, but thank you for trying to help us so far. Appreciate it.
I'm flattered. Thank you very much.